Hello and welcome to Overdrive. I'm Rohit Paradkar, sitting in a hotel room today. I do not have a car with me to review, but the day has been quite productive. I have spent a lot of time today with the upcoming new Hyundai Santro. It's coming out later this month. I got a little foretaste of the car, got to spend some time with it, got to drive it around for a bit on Hyundai's test track. So this video is more about the first impressions. I'm going to talk about my first impressions of the car. Unfortunately, I'm not going to be able to show you much of the car because, like I said, this exercise was more about getting a foretaste of the car. We couldn't take any photos or any videos. We were strictly told not to. So all that happens later after the launch or after the drive. But this video is more about my personal impressions of the car. And I'm also going to take all those questions that you guys have posted on Ask Cody through our social media channels. So I'm going to begin with the first question, the first most common question that people have about the new Santro. The question was first posted by Anuja, followed by Girish and a lot of others. What is the final name for this car? Well, Hyundai is calling it the Santro. I know you were expecting it already. Now, Hyundai did have a Hyundai Namakaran contest or a naming contest for their people's car, which is the upcoming Santro. And they say that over 66% of the way the entries that they got hinted that they wanted, or people wanted, the Santro name to come back, and which is what is happening. There's no prefix, no suffix, no additions to the name. It's just called the Santro, just like before. The only difference being the Santro logo was a little different earlier on the previous model that was discontinued in 2014. The new Santro has a slightly different logo to it. That's about it. But of course, the design is a big change. In fact, that's the other query that I've got from a lot of people. What is my opinion on the design of the car? How does it look when you actually see it in person? So I think it looks quite handsome. It's a sober design. They've not gone too radical with it. Now we know that Hyundai designs the fluidic design language, the fluidic design 2.0. All these have been very radical, very strong in the way they come out, and the Santro is not that. The Santro has a very sober design, and I think it looks quite good. Unlike most other Hyundai cars which look a little too radical, this doesn't try to be too radical. This doesn't try to stand out from the crowd. It gels in very nicely. It has the vibe of the old i10, but the overall face, it has a few hints of the Kona or the Santa Fe. I know both of these are crossovers and SUVs, but they also portray Hyundai's new design language, where you have a small lighting element up top in line with the bonnet, and then you have the grille sitting much lower. So it has a similar design here with the Santro as well. There's no grille element connecting the two headlight units, and that makes the bonnet longer, or appear longer than what it is. The nose appears to be longer than what it is. And the cascading grille that we've seen on many new Hyundai cars, it sits a little lower now. It also integrates the fog lamps. I'm not sure if that's a very good placement because fog lamps usually work best when they are closer to the ground. That also leaves a lot of empty space on the either ends of the bumper. And I think that's going to be a very popular spot for aftermarket daytime running lights. If you move over to the back, the tail light is actually quite sober as well. In fact, it is one of the most sober designs that I've seen in the recent times in this particular space. It's got squarish tail lamps, nothing too radical about it either, nothing too in your face about it either. There's a dual tone finish for the bumper. You also have two reflective strips. So overall, the design of the tailgate is pretty much sober. It's very sober compared to the front end, but I think the overall design is quite handsome. I also like those two creases that they have on the side profile, especially the one at the front. The boomerang shaped crease looks really nice to me. The wheels, they're small, 14 inches, but the wheel wells aren't too big. They're nicely proportionately designed. So overall, the proportions of the car, they're really nice. Like I said, it doesn't appear like a typical tall boy. It has a nice proportionate design, and I think it will appeal to many. Now, what about the cabin? Well, the cabin, typical black and beige cabin in typical Hyundai way. They love their black and beige cabins, and the same continues with the Santro as well. They say that the center console is inspired from the face of an elephant. Well, that's because of the shape of the AC vents. It does incorporate a 7-inch touchscreen infotainment system. It has satellite navigation and the latest generation of smartphone interfaces like Apple CarPlay, Android Auto, MirrorLink. All that is there, and I think that's a very good move for this segment in particular. The first thing that you will notice when you get inside the cabin is the amount of space that it offers for this particular segment. I think it's going to be the roomiest car in the segment. Whether it's the front seats or the rear seats, it's very roomy. If you look at the shape of the rear door, it's got an angular shape to it that also makes it quite wide. It opens quite wide, so ingress egress is very easy. The seats have a relatively higher edge point as compared to most low slung hatchbacks, so ingress egress is very easy. And like I said, the room is phenomenal, especially in the back seat. The headroom is amazing. in terms of room, they've completely nailed it, even in the front. So there are some design quirks. So for example, the power window switches. Now power windows are only available on the top two trims, but the power window switches are on the tunnel console right after the gear shifter. That may not be a very ergonomic arrangement, though it does fall easily at hand. It's just a matter of getting used to. And because they've placed the power window switches there, it liberates a lot of space on the door pad. So they've nicely scooped out the door pad, so that again adds to the whole room at the front. The same as at the back, and despite that, all four door pads can easily hold 1 liter bottles. So I think that's a very good design in itself. The rear bench, it's contoured very flat, so they wanted to increase the overall shoulder space, and I think it's worked. 3 adults is not going to be possible, but this car is again aimed at nuclear families. So 3 kids, they can absolutely sit in comfort. 2 adults and a kid again can sit in comfort. The rear seat is not a 60-40 split, but it is collapsible. It also gets 2 scobs for headrests. Not going to be very safe. Even the front seats have integrated headrests, but the height is decent, so they should work as head restraints in case of a rear end collision. As for the cabin, like I said, it's very roomy, it's feature rich. I like what they've done. The plastics, you know that they are a notch below the Grand i10 in terms of their quality, but the fit, the finish is quite good. It does feel plasticky because they haven't really used much chrome inside the cabin. In fact, I couldn't find any chrome garnish inside the cabin. In a way, it's a nice thing, but yeah, that's something that will need getting used to for a lot of people out there who want chrome on their in their car. But what I really liked is Hyundai has a Dyna green color. Now that's an exclusive color. The color is very similar to their signature color on the Kona. That's the same color the same color Kona that we had on the cover for this month's issue. But what I really like is they've matched the color of the stitching, the seat belts, the bezels, everything to that vibrant green, and it really looks nice. You know what, Lamborghini, if they wanted to match colors on the stitching and the seatbelt to the exterior, they would charge you lakhs for it. And here we are talking about literally an entry spec car, and Hyundai is doing that. So I think that's a damn good move, but it's only available on that exclusive Dyna green color. It's not available on the blue or the red or any of the others. But I think it would have been a nice touch if they could do it for all the sporty colors that they have in the palette. How many colors do they have in the palette? I don't know, but the signature color is going to be golden. Like I said, with the design, with everything, they are going a little slow. They want to play things sober. They don't want to go out of the box. But that green is going to appeal to a lot of young people out there. It looks really good. So when the car comes out, do go and check it out. Do see how the interior is and tell me what you think about it. I'm going to move to the next question, that about safety from one Mr. I am Lambo Lover. Unfortunately, that's the only question that we've got on safety, and come on guys, you need to be a little more vigilant about safety. ABS and driver airbag is standard. The front passenger airbag is only available on the top trims, and you get high strength steels in the construction of the chassis. Hyundai says it gets up to 63% high strength steels in its construction, which should in theory make the structure quite safe. But like I said, we would want global NCAP to step in and give us a better insight into the overall safety. That's about it. You do not get adjustable head restraints. You don't get an adjustable driver seat height. You don't even get a reach adjustment on the steering. So these are a few things that that may not go well for people of a shorter frame. So make sure that you take a long test drive before you book this car, before you end up buying this car. I'm going to move to the next question now. This one comes from Abhishek George, who wants to know if it will be priced as much as the Alto K10. And the next question is about what cars will the Santro rival. I'm going to club these two questions together because they mean more or less the same. Well, the natural rivals for this car are going to be the WagonR, the Celerio, and the Tiago. It's not going to be priced as much as the Alto K10. This is not going to be an entry-level offering anymore. This will sit on top of the Eon and below the Grand i10, which means I'm looking at a price range of about 3.5 to 5.75 for this car. That's the price range that I expect this car to lie in. And I'm going to talk a little about the overall drivability and what engines does this car get. That's another question that a lot of you have asked me about. Well, let's not say engines because there are no engine options. There's only one engine. It's a 1.1 liter petrol engine. It puts out 69 PS of power at about 5,500 RPM and about 100 Newton meters of torque at about 4,500 RPM. I know those figures are not too big, but for this segment, I think these are decent figures. And I did drive that car and I quite like that engine. For beginners, it's a 4-cylinder engine. Unlike some 3-cylinder engines that you have in the category, this is a 4-cylinder engine. So straight up, it sounds much better. Even at idling RPM, it's a little vocal on the outside, it's a little noisy on the outside, but it's a familiar, nice sound of a 4-cylinder hum. So I won't complain about that. When you're inside the car, The engine feels very refined. You can hardly hear the drivetrain at city speeds. I couldn't take it to highway speeds because it was a very small test track. But at city speeds, well, when you start the car, it settles into 800 RPM idling. It's quite silent there, no pedal vibrations either. It takes off quite cleanly as well. So low end is decent. We try to sort of change gears and make sure that we drive it in as much low speeds as possible, and it impressed. There was no knocking anywhere. So I think it's a good engine, and even the mid range was quite good. So you'll get two gearbox options on this. You have the 5-speed manual, or Hyundai for the first time is also going to offer an AMT, and I think the AMT is going to be a quite a popular option to go with in the metros, and that is what Hyundai is expecting as well. So it's a 5-speed AMT. It's their first, but it behaves quite well. The shift pause is quite minimal. You don't really get that annoying head nod between shifts, which is a very good thing. And when you go under hard acceleration, this gearbox is ready to drop up to 3 gears. So we tried hard acceleration, and from 5th it came down all the way to the 2nd, so it can drop up to 3 gears. So it's quite a responsive gearbox in that sense, and it also upshifts to a higher gear when you're light on the throttle. So fuel economy is not going to be a problem at all. We found ourselves cruising at about 80 kilometers an hour at about 2200 RPM in 5th gear when we were driving the AMT, which I think is a very relaxed engine speed. So that should translate in theory into good fuel economy. Hyundai is claiming about 20.3 kilometers to a liter, but we'll validate all that with a proper road test. Hyundai is also claiming that this engine can reach a top speed of up to 150 kilometers an hour. Not very optimistic, but at the end of the day, it's a city car, and that is what it is. So don't really push your luck. As long as you are in the legal speed limits, I think this car should perform really well. To that effect, it also gets 165 section tires, so high speed stability, I'm not sure how it's going to be. These are skinny tires, so that's again something that I'm going to validate with the road test. But overall, I think the engine, the gearbox is really finely tuned, especially for the Indian conditions, the kind of conditions that this car is going to be subject to. So city traffic, bumper to bumper traffic is not going to be a problem at all. I don't think pulling overtakes at city speeds or even at highway speeds is going to be much of an issue for this engine. It revs quite freely, it revs quite quickly. So overall, it's nice, and it even sounds quite good past the 5000 RPM range. So when the car comes out, do take a test drive. Now, one grudge I have about the AMT on the gear shifter is, now this car is going to be bought by a lot of first timers, and there the AMT could be a bit of a problem. It's not a big problem, it's not a big issue, it's a small issue that I have. The backlight for the R and D, where it shows you the selection of the gear that you've made, it's not very readable. So the selection is not very readable. So especially when you're trying to park the car or when you're parking the car, it's very easy to unintentionally slot the gear or slot the shifter into reverse or drive when you're trying to look for neutral. And that's something that will need getting used to. I hope Hyundai fixes that with probably a better backlight or a better gear selector light for that matter. So I think that's the only little grudge that I have with the AMT. But apart from that, I think the overall impressions that I have about this car are quite positive. The cabin is good, the cabin is roomy. I like the overall fit and finish. Though it feels a little plasticky, it still feels better than most of the other cars in this particular segment. I already told you what the rivals are. It's going to rival the Celerio, Wagoner, Tiago and the likes. I think this car in a way pushes the segment forward. It brings in a lot of segment first, like the infotainment that it's bringing in, the kind of space that it's bringing in. So I think Hyundai does have a winner on their hands. It actually looks like a very good car in terms of the way it's spec'd, and I just hope they don't get too optimistic with the pricing. They price it well, and if they do that, I think the Santro can actually lead the charts for this particular segment. Well, that's all that I have from the little drive that I had, the little impressions that I have about the car right now. I have a more detailed review up on the Overdrive website, so don't forget to check it out. It's on overdrive.in. So do check it out. Do leave me all your feedback. If there are any more questions that you have about the car, please send them through to us. We are accessible on all social media channels, so send it through and we'll try to answer them if we haven't covered something already or not covered them in our review either. Like I said, 23rd is the launch, 25th or 26th of this month is when we'll drive, so we will have more impressions about the car coming towards you, and sometime next month is when I will road test the car and hopefully put it through a comparison test with the other rivals. So stay tuned to Overdrive. We'll have a lot more content on the Santro soon.